Welcome to There's a Method to the Madness. My name is Rob Maxwell. I'm an exercise physiologist and personal trainer. I'm the owner of Maxwell's fitness programs, and I've been in business since 1994. The purpose of this podcast is to get to the real deal of what really works, and most importantly, why things work. Hence the name, there is a method to the madness. All right, so we're going to have some fun today talking about some cool things, I hope. All things in fitness, health, wellness, getting better, moving the ball, all those positive things. Before I get to that, let me thank Jonathan and Lynn Gilden of the Gilden Group at Realty Pros. They are committed to providing the highest level of customer service in home sales. Why don't you just give them a shout and figure out what your house is worth? 386-451-2412. All right, so let's get to today's episode. You know, there is such a distinction and fine line between knowing what to do and doing what we know to do. There's the argument, there's the physiology, the training, the, definite how-tos. For the past few episodes outside of the one that I did about running and ultras and setting goals and things like that, I've been covering a lot of the acute program variables. And just as a little recap, those are just the things that go into making up a workout, such as exercise selection, like whether you're going to use machines or dumbbells, barbells, kettlebells, body weight, whatever. Then there's sets, like how much volume, like how many sets to do, how many total exercises to do, what repetition range you should focus on, what your load should be, what your tempo should be, what your rest time should be. Those are all like the acute program variables, and they matter, and they definitely help us professional trainers put together a workout that's most efficient for you. You as in the clients that come to the gym, or, anybody really. But, the clients that come to the gym, we have to think about a schedule. They are scheduled for either 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and we have to put together a workout that will fit within that time. So we have to consider all of those variables. We want everybody to get the most out of their time there. So we want to make sure it's programmed, and those variables help us do that. But I had this discussion again with a client this morning, and I like that. I really like when clients are into working out, and you think, well, aren't they all? No, some just kind of want to get it done, and they almost approach it that way. And hey, if it works, that's fine. But some really like to talk about human potential and getting better, and I like that. I always enjoy those kind of talks. I'm a philosopher at heart. Absolutely. And, I have my psychology degree prior to my exercise physiology degree, and I've always loved history and psychology and philosophy and all these great things. So we were kind of kicking the can down the road a little bit about, do people really not know, or do they just not want to do it? And, I get this. I get it. I wouldn't call it cynicism, because this person is absolutely not cynical, but maybe a little skeptical of the human condition. And I get that, but, I did take the side of, well, there's a lot of confusion out there. There's a lot of people that aren't sure on diet. The marketing has really, really pushed different things. And the same with strength training. I mean, you can open up your social media. There'll be commercials for, this magic hack that will do it for you. Back in the day, it was 8-minute abs. I don't know if people remember that, but little commercial. If you just do this 8-minute ab routine, you'll have, an 8-pack, which of course, I don't care if you did an hour of abs, you're not going to get an 8-pack. The 8-pack, 6-pack, and it really is an 8-pack, as Ellen always says, not a 6-pack, but, if you really want those nice defined abs, that's going to be made in the kitchen. But anyway, it was just a hack, and now the hacks are a little different but the same. So I want to talk a little bit today about, sure, there's this, are people kind of just not doing what they're supposed to do? And are there some that don't know what to do? So I want to just basically kind of cut that down the middle and say it. I think it's a little bit of both. And I want to get everybody to try to focus on what they can control. Like, what can you control? Have you done everything that you know to do for your own wellness? I read this great quote this morning. I read a couple different daily meditation books. I just like that. That's kind of how I start my day. I have a couple cups of coffee as I read some inspirational stuff, and then I write in a journal a little bit, to get my mind right. And then I exercise. It's my typical morning routine. Sharpen the saw both mentally, spiritually, and then sharpen the saw physically. To steal from Stephen Covey, I always like that line, sharpening the saw. And then my saw is sharp, and I can go out and hopefully be productive. But the line said, and it allegedly comes from where camels were transportation, so way back. It said, trust in God, but tie your camel to a tree. So I don't ever get religious or even very spiritual on this, and that's not the point. But, it's a great metaphor, right? So yeah, you've got to kind of trust the gods, trust nature, however you view life and the things you can't control, but you still have to tie your camel to a tree. Now, I'm an animal lover, so I don't exactly like animals being tied, but hey, I get the point. Or somebody will steal it, it will walk off, right? So we have to do our part. So are we, whether we know what we have to do or not, are we doing everything we know to do? Are we tying our camel to a tree? So it's funny. A lot of times I check my statistics on Buzzsprout, my server that hosts the podcast for me, and I check it, and I'm sometimes very surprised at what episodes get a ton of uploads and which ones don't. Sometimes it's just a matter of luck and timing. There's nothing I can do. At the same time, I've also listened to people who do these things, do them at a big time level. And, they say, don't check your statistics, because then you will get into what you think people want to listen to. And then you start kind of turning all of your information into that. And then that's not the real way to go, because maybe it's not very authentic. So I see both sides to that. And anybody that knows me knows I'm way too hard-headed to be swayed by any of that anyway. Me, not not being the best at stuff like that might actually go the opposite direction. They don't want to listen to it. Well, I'm going to continue to just do this over and over and over, But I don't do that either. What I do is kind of talk about things I either have questions for, or talk about things that are on my mind, because I just think that's, hey, if I've got something to say, I'm going to say it. But
stay with us. We'll be right back.
Are you ready to unlock your full potential? I want to introduce you to the Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast, a powerful resource to transform your life today. With expert interviews, practical tips, and inspiring stories, this podcast is your roadmap to lasting wellness. Here's what a listener has to say.
I used to struggle with my health, but this podcast changed everything. It's like having a personal trainer, nutritionist, and life coach totally for free.
With over 2,000 five-star reviews, we're a podcast you can trust. The Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast, available now wherever you get your podcasts.
Where I was leading with that is that it seems like people aren't into the psychology and the philosophy as much as they want to hear the hardcore science. That's real interesting to me. I also think it's really off base, because I've been doing this, now just a little bit over 30 years. And I can promise everybody out there that the problem is people are just not doing the simple things. Sure, there's information that people are still confused about, as I said earlier, especially when it comes to diet, low carb, not low carb. Should I eat gluten, not eat gluten? Should I be a vegan, not a vegan? All these things that continue to get kicked around, and largely a lot of it is simply just opinion. But there is some of that. But at the same time, people are not exercising the muscle of, I'm going to do everything in my control. And that's just not the right way. And I don't know how to get people to do that. Like, for me, it's absolutely about that. I don't know where I got that from, but I remember at an early age, I've talked about it before. When in part of my high school journey and junior high school journey, I was overweight. I ate whatever the heck I wanted to eat. You could maybe call it self-soothing. I don't know. My dad died when I was 13. My grandparents the same year. We had just moved to Florida a couple years before. My life was upside down. This is in the 70s. And if there was counseling, we couldn't afford it. So like, those were tough times. I guess that's why I did it. But I went through a phase where, I just got chunky and ate whatever the heck I wanted to eat. Even though I was an active kid, I was a competitive tennis player, I still got chubby and I felt chubby. And that's the key. I felt chubby, so I felt awful about myself. And that's not the age you want to do that. And then somehow, some way, I just woke up. I don't know if it was a day or a week. I can't remember. It was so long ago, but I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. And I didn't know exactly what to do. How could I? I was 17 years old when I made this decision. How could I have known the best diet? How could I? I didn't. I just really used common sense, and I just started eating. As I wrote in my book, You Can't Outrun a Poor Diet. It's all about behavior choices versus diet, like diet in the word of eat this, this, and this. And I started eating 3 square meals a day, as balanced as I knew to make them at the time. No pure junk food, like no candy, no soda, no chips, no seconds, no desserts. And I got skinny. I got skinny really fast, right before my senior year of high school, which I'm so grateful for, because then I really got to enjoy high school. It sounds crazy. You couldn't enjoy it when you're overweight. No, it was a different experience. Now, I took it a little too far my senior year and then into college, enjoyed it a little too much, if you know what I mean. But, that's not part of this story. So like, I exercised everything that I knew to do. And I didn't really start working out until a little bit later that year that I was skinny. Like, I got really skinny. I was like 5'11", 6 foot, 135 pounds. I don't know what I was when I started that journey, like maybe 30 pounds heavier. But at the time, that felt really, really big, And so I did everything that I knew to do. And I just think that's so important, the Stoics always talk about the philosophy of Stoicism, that is, control everything that's in your control. So tie your camel to a tree, The rest, no, there's not much you can do. So if you don't have the genetics to be skinny or have a 6-pack, so to say, and anybody can get thinner. Anybody can get heavier. Everybody can get more muscular. Everybody can lose muscle. Everybody can get stronger. Everybody can get weaker. Everybody can get faster. Everybody can get slower. But genetics does determine the extent of all of those things. So you can't control that. You can't control the genetics, but you can tie your camel to a tree and do everything within your power to be the best version of you. And I promise you, you can do that. And I promise you that if you really, really, really do everything that you're supposed to do, you will be absolutely happy with the outcome. You may not get 8-pack abs. Like, you may not be able to get up on a bodybuilding stage in your underwear, basically, and show those abs. So what? Maybe that's not in your genetics, but you can get thinner. You might not be able to run a 5K in 15 minutes and be up there with those world-class athletes. So what? You can run one at your best time, and you will be happy for doing it. So how do I get people to understand that the philosophy, that the psychology is more important than exactly the how-tos. How do I get it across to you that if we just picked up the tool of doing what we know to do each day, because we know what to do. I will agree with my client who said that this morning. We know what to do at the bare minimum. We know if we get up and go for a long walk instead of going and having some crap food breakfast at a fast food restaurant, we will be benefiting ourselves. We know if we make time in our day to get to the gym and strength train, we will be benefiting ourselves. We know if we decide that we've been drinking a little too much and we're going to stop, we will benefit ourselves, or we're going to drastically cut down. Like, we know this. We know that if we quit smoking cigarettes, we have cut our risk for lung cancer and other problems and other health crises. We have really lowered that risk, and we know we will feel better. We know it. And I know with addiction, it's a little harder to just say stop, but people aren't doing what they need to do. And when I tune in on social media, which I've joked about before, which is like stupid of me, but then again, it's not, because there does have to be, I mean, maybe that's a God complex, me thinking I'm going to change people's minds. I don't know, but there does have to be some truth out there on things. And it just seems like there's so many lies spread everywhere. And the things I see the most is that the negativity, just the people believe in every walk of life, not just fitness, but that they can't do things. Like, there's this pessimistic attitude that I don't get. I don't get it. Like, it doesn't work. The pessimism doesn't work. So we're going up to New York in the Hudson Valley, where I love to go, where I was originally born and lived my first 10 years of my life. I'd spent a lot of time there growing up because I still had family there. Beautiful, beautiful lodge up in the mountains. It's going to be cold and all that stuff. It's December now. And I called the guy, the innkeeper, who was very nice. We spoke to him and talked to him a little bit when I stayed up there a month ago or so. And I said, hey, I've got a couple books out, Method to the Madness, Can't Outrun a Poor Diet, introduced myself, so to say, and said, I'd love to come up and do a book signing up there. I just thought it'd be fun, turn my trip into a little bit of a work trip, And he was like thrilled. He was like, oh, that'd be great. We could put up flyers. You can talk about fitness. I mean, like, to me, that is like so cool. Like, this is a pretty fancy hotel that I like to go to when the season's out so I can afford it. And, here I get to do a talk up there on fitness, and how many years ago? 40 years ago, here I am, this overweight teenager, Who would have thought in 83, 82? I wouldn't have been like, are you crazy? But so how does that happen? Am I special? No. It's like, I think one of the things I do have going for me, thank God, maybe parenting, I don't know how I got there, good role models, but is I'm not afraid to ask. Like, I'm not afraid to do the next thing I need to do. And then I'm not afraid to ask. Like, that's in my power. He could say no. Be like, no, man, I never heard of you. Whatever. Okay, I don't care. I tried. I don't know. It's like, why won't people just do what they know to do? Whatever it is. The other day, I'm part of this Buzzsprout group for my podcast on Facebook. And I really thought the question was a joke. One of the people wrote in and said, I want to monetize my podcast. Anybody know how I can get sponsors? And I'm reading all these replies and I wrote, ask. Ask. Like, what do you mean? Just ask people. How do you think I got my sponsors? The Gildan Group. How did I get my sponsors overhead door? I asked them. Like, we have to tie our camel to the tree. We have to do our part. That's our part. We can ask for what we want. Okay, so let's take that into the fitness world about asking. Maybe you're struggling getting to the gym. You work for somebody. I hear this sometimes from younger people. And they say they can't because of their schedule. I said, have you ever asked your boss to maybe change your schedule a little bit? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But most people these days, oh man, I can't do that. I mean, that's what everybody says. I can't do that. I can't do that. I mean, people are just so negative. And I think because they're negative, they're afraid to start. I mean, is that the problem? Is that why people won't go to the gym when they know they're supposed to? Because they just don't think it's going to work? Like, are the expectations just too high? Or are the expectations too low? Like you've just given up on yourself. So you feel like, well, I can't do this, so I'm not going to do anything. I mean, I don't know. And it's not just America, you know? I mean, it's like, sure, we get a reputation for being pretty entitled and, you know, I mean, we don't have the greatest reputation, right? But I just think people in general have just gotten really negative and really cynical. And I think the one thing you don't want to get negative and cynical about is yourself and your ability to do what you want to do. And it starts with physical fitness. You know, in my book that I'm finishing up now, which I'm really happy with, I listed the benefits to strength training. And, you know, I was at 19, right? So a little sneak preview here. I added 20. I said, build your confidence, because it does. I think like when we work in the gym or when we run or when we cycle or when we swim or when we climb or when we power walk, like we feel accomplished. We feel like we've done something. So like when you start eating better and you start tracking your food and tracking your weight, and you notice after a week, you look at your numbers and they're improving, you start to feel effective. You start to feel like you can do this. When you go to the gym and you use more weight than you did when you started, you start to feel better about yourself. I have seen it over and over and over. It's a big reason why for years I pushed to try to get more strength training and exercise programs into the substance abuse centers. And there just isn't the funding, which is too bad, because it is such an important tool to somebody getting back on the horse. It is such an important tool. And I just wish the funding can be found or the resources can be found, because I just believe 100% that part of tying the camel to the tree is taking care of our physical self. You know, and I'll close with this, saying this. When I did work in a treatment center, one of the big things we used to, and I was just out of college, my first degree, one of the things that we did at Stewart Treatment Center, it wasn't Stewart Marchman yet, and I worked in the residential adolescent program. One of the things that we did was we always made sure that the kids, the adolescents, put their best foot forward by making sure that they showered. And believe it or not, a lot of them did not want to. Put on the best clothes that they had, tucked in their shirts, fixed their stains, fixed their holes, put the shoes on, shaved, put on deodorant, all those things. Like, they had to. It was a rule. And no, we weren't being dicks. It was important to make sure that the person knew that the better they felt, the better they projected themselves. And it was just a very positive addition to their day. If, you know, it's the one thing they had control over. Like, they may not be able to get out of their dark mood early on, but they can control whether or not they put their best foot forward by good personal hygiene and grooming. And we would notice a change. They'd come out of their room cleaned up and they were smiling. That just makes a difference. You know, when people are depressed, they don't always want to take care of themselves. So, you know, I just want you to think about that. And I know some of you out there only want to hear about the acute program variables, and you want me to tell you exactly how many sets to do, what exercises to do, what reps, and what load. Okay, great. But what if you're not going to do it? You know, the more important thing is to do what you can do. Take the positive steps you know to do and do it. And I promise you, you'll be happy with the results. So tie your camel to a tree and then forget about the rest because you can't control it. Thank you, Overhead Door of Daytona Beach. Jeff and Zach Hawk absolutely do everything they can to better themselves. By the way, Zach is now down 25 pounds. He was pretty stout before, stout as a muscular. Now he's just shredded. Why? He's doing what he needs to do. So that's awesome. And they have the best garage door company, the best product, the best service. Give them a shout. OverheadDoorDaytona.com.